All right. Another in our series of interviews with our candidates, both local here in Lake Geneva and we had a couple in Delavan as well on our line. So go back and take a look at all of those if they pertain to you. But in the meantime, we have Sherri Ames. She is also a candidate for alderman here in the city of Lake Geneva. Welcome, Sherri. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing great.
Excellent.
This is something that is new to me.
Yes, this is something that's new to us. We sometimes record interviews on the political side and put them on one of our talk shows, but there are so many and I didn't have time to do all of them. And so we just decided to use our social and digital media channels and do this for everybody. So they're accessible 24/7 for whoever wants to listen and however many times they want to listen. So we're glad that you're here. Thank you for participating.
Well, thank you for having me.
So the first question, and again, everybody has the same 3 questions. The first question is, what are the top 3 things that you believe need pretty immediate attention here in Lake Geneva?
Well, there's a lot of things. You know, I had a hard time picking my top 3 because we know that the current council, mayor, and staff have been working on for the last 2 years is the Hillmore, Highway 50, and short-term rentals.
Sure.
These projects are taking a long time, but to do it right, we have to do it. So I kind of went down to some of the other things. Channel 25 has been a nightmare for everyone.
There's there's a lot of rumors about that. So can you kind of set some of that straight?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Okay, this had nothing to do with the mayor and this new council. It was the equipment that we needed to upgrade. And, you know, if people remember 2 years ago, a lot of stuff that was being shipped to the U.S. was stuck on ships.
Ah, yes.
So some of our stuff was stuck on a ship.
Okay.
You know, and then it's all been in charter's hands the whole time. You know, we did not say, oh, we don't want Channel 25. Yes, we want 25. And hopefully within the next month, I guess we're waiting for somebody in Texas to flip a switch. You know, and some of the equipment was old, so we had to upgrade stuff. Right. So, you know, it was nothing that the mayor, the staff, or the council did.
I would have to think that Channel 25 makes everybody's job easier in that people see what's happening, they're able to watch, they're able to listen, and then they're able to reach out to you and it's a form of communication with everybody.
Correct.
You know, much like, a newsletter or, just it keeps you from having to go around and knock on everybody's doors and say, this is what happened. How do you feel about it? And so I don't think it's a great asset to have. I can't imagine that the city council doesn't want it repaired as soon as possible, as well as the mayor.
Well, it is being videoed. You just have to go to the city website to watch it.
Right.
And there's a lot of people who are not technology inclined.
Right. That's a nice way to put it.
I myself, there's some things it's like, boy, how do I work this?
Yeah.
Because you don't use it all the time. Right. So, that's one of our big things.
Sure.
Another thing is housing for our workforce. How are we handling that? We need places for people to live who can afford to live here. We're not just a white collar town.
Right.
And we have all these people who are working service industry and for the in the tourist industry, all of that.
Even our basics.
Yes.
Yeah, groceries and everywhere, restaurants, yeah.
Yes. And it's also hurting our schools that we don't have.
Families
moving here, we have school choice, but, a lot of these working families can't drive their kids to our schools. So it's a snowball effect here.
Sure.
And the other big thing is parking.
Almost nobody talks about parking.
No, never.
Never.
We've always had problems with parking. We always will have problems with parking. But as a resident, we do get 3 free hours. It's not consecutive, and I've heard people complain about that. But living here, we know how to maneuver. And I do a lot of my shopping downtown during the week or during the summer.
Sure.
I go downtown before it gets busy.
Sure.
Plus, I live in a walkable distance from the downtown.
Right.
But I can tell how busy our town is. They redid Eastview's parking lot. So before that, I could tell how busy downtown was, how far the cars went past my house.
Sure. Okay.
Now, it's not as bad except for Venetian Fest, Winterfest, and Oktoberfest.
Sure.
So when the cars are parked past my house, I stay away.
Right.
But I know how to maneuver the parking issue.
Can I, on that really quickly, and I know this is a kind of an aside question, but do you feel like if the trolley that they are contemplating, do you feel like some of the residents might utilize that during the busier periods to enjoy where they wouldn't normally, want to drive? You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
Do you think that they would use that?
I think some will. We had a trolley many, many years ago here in Lake Geneva. I mean, my kids were little.
Yeah.
Okay. And it didn't go over big, but I know that me and my friends, we would hop on the trolley for something to do. Go up to Geneva Square when Hardee's was there,
God.
But they did do a lot of people pick up, was it Pick and Save at the time or was it the Pig? Who knows? But there were a lot of people who used that trolley to go there because they didn't have any way to get there.
Sure. Okay.
So
maybe.
And I don't think it was marketed real well. And I believe what we were talking about is that this trolley will not be free for people to ride on. There will be a charge. So, this isn't going to come from the taxpayers.
Right.
I wasn't going to go into the trolley thing because right now it's very contentious.
Well, and nothing has been decided. They still have to figure a lot out. The only thing that they've done is, is look into it and they intend to purchase it. I mean, that's what the bid wants to do. But you're right. It's hard to go into it because nothing has been decided yet.
Right.
Yeah.
But we have to do something.
Absolutely. Especially for the next few years.
Yes.
Even if we don't keep them after that, something has to give. And we have to have some kind of supplemental transportation into downtown for people.
Well, especially even for the workers.
Absolutely.
They'll need a place to park. It's a nightmare.
Yeah.
My daughter was talking to me this morning about they were in Chicago and you can park in a zone for 2 hours and then you have to move out of that zone. But we don't have the zones here in Lake Geneva.
Lake Geneva is the zone.
It is the zone, so, you're going to lose your parking spot and end up parking 6 blocks away.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And they'll figure it out. Something will happen and everybody will understand where it's being paid for and how it's happening. And so, but you're right. It's very hard when we don't have the answer yet and people don't like that.
Right.
So I understand why you can't really go into that.
Yeah. And then, for handicapped people, if you have the handicap placard, you can park in any public area for free. It doesn't have to be where there's a sign.
Right.
And that's great.
It is great.
Because there's a lot of people who, might need it, but they'll think to themselves, you know what, I can park over here and leave this spot for somebody who really needs it.
Yeah. Or I feel great today. I want to walk.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
So that was the 3 things? Did we do the 3 things? Okay.
I believe so.
Okay. So then my next question is, when your constituents, when your neighbors reach out to you, what are the top 3 things that they want to see you try to tackle?
Well, I've already answered 3 of them.
Of course.
Those are probably the top 3. But the other thing I get is transparency. But it all depends on who you ask, whether the council and the mayor is being transparent.
Okay.
I believe we have, considering we don't have Channel 25.
Right.
And there's a lot of things that we can't discuss that we've done in closed session. So, some of that stuff.
And that's a legal problem. That's the lawyers. You guys don't have choices there.
Yes. Right. So, the transparency about the simple property. We did what we were supposed to do. We came out. We voted on what we discussed. So, I can talk about that because now we have...
It's a done deal.
It's a done deal.
Right.
And it was interesting with that is all 8 aldermen voted yes to do that.
Right.
to go into negotiations with the simple group.
Right.
And there's a lot of people who, don't like Tom Hartz and Young Chow, but it's not about them. It's about what they're going to do. So I'm rambling on. That wasn't really one of mine.
That's okay.
People also need to feel that they're being listened to. Lots of things we can answer, but there's a lot of things that I have to go to staff or legal about because I don't know the answer. Or if I don't know the answer and whatever, I can send them to who they need to talk to.
Right.
And and I've done that. I've also offered to meet people for coffee. Come on.
Sure.
I'll go meet you downtown. Usually it's at a locally owned business because I try to do that. But I've had some people back out because they don't want to hear what I have to say, which is interesting.
That is interesting.
But, I'm open to go and have coffee with people in a public place. Absolutely in a public place.
Yeah.
My phone number is on the city website. I have 2 phone numbers. I promised my husband when I was elected, I would have my private cell phone number and I would have a city council number.
Sure.
So when it comes up city council, I can leave the room.
Right.
But, people can call. They can email. And some of the things that we can't help people with are if it's a civil case.
Yeah.
There's nothing the city can do about that.
Right.
So, we just kind of ignore that because they may have been told time and time again that there's nothing we can do about a civil case.
Right. Right.
So, people want to be listened to.
Sure.
And so I guess with that was 5 questions because
that's okay.
Answers, because the 3 are the big ones.
Right.
So I was digging around trying to come up with something a little different.
Right. So that's the 3. So we got that. Okay. So then our last question is, and you can answer this however you want. What do you feel like your strongest assets are that you bring to the table? And this can be, experience. This can be personal. This can be whatever you want. What do you feel that you want people to know that are the reasons to vote for you?
Well, I've been a 45-year resident here. I've lived in the same house. We kind of live in a fishbowl where we live because people see us, with my husband being a teacher, but that was very important to him to live in the town he taught in. But that's beside the point. We have to remember that tourists are our bread and butter. We've always been a tourist town. We always will be a tourist town. And when you live here, you know how to maneuver this community. I hope you do. And I will do everything I can to protect our lake because that's our biggest asset right there. So, and public safety is another thing. We are finally going to get a stop sign on the corner of Broad and Dodge. I was pushing that, and come to find out, there should have been one there since 2007.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it was never done.
Wow.
It'll take people time to get used to, but that is a very dangerous intersection.
Well, there's a couple of intersections that stop signs have been added lately, whether it's making it a 4-way stop from a 2 or just adding stop sign. We all forget now that that those intersections didn't have stop signs. Yeah, so it doesn't take long to get used to
especially
that,
the one on Dodge and Broad.
Yeah.
And Center and Center and Dodge.
Yeah.
It's
funny.
I'm sorry, not Dodge.
We forget.
Geneva, I'm sorry,
yes,
Geneva Street.
We forget that they weren't there after a couple months.
Right.
It doesn't take long to get used to that.
And I wasn't the one who was pushing all this, but I backed her 100%. Mary Jo with the stoplights on Town Line and Edwards. That should have been there when Edwards was done.
Yes.
Especially with the one by Bloomfield and Edwards.
Yes.
That should have been done when that school was built. Also up in that area, crossing from Badger over to the middle school, when that was put in, I still had kids in school, and there was nothing there. And one night the band was going to go over to play for football. A woman almost hit the band because she wasn't paying attention. And it was dark at that time.
Sure.
So that's another thing. And our crosswalks, we need them to make them more ADA friendly. And, that's going to cost money. Mm-hmm. And if I had $1 trillion, I would do this, get this for everybody. Because it's not just ADA, it's people with strollers or people who have walkers,
things like that.
Things like that. So the safety is another thing.
So some of that will, though, as far as Main Street is concerned, be taken care of with the project.
Correct. And the stoplights and, Todd's been working diligently with the DNR, and people don't see what's happening. But, we're going to get those flashing beacon lights, which, it has helped over by the bottle shop.
Sure, absolutely.
But I get annoyed when somebody bolts out there and they haven't pushed the button.
Yeah.
Because that is something that you see in your side vision.
Right. Peripheral, yeah.
Yeah. So the other thing I will not do is I will not micromanage the staff. That's a big thing. I'll go and ask them questions. We hired them to do specific jobs. And I think the staff we have now is fantastic. They are very easy to approach. You can get your answer. Even residents can call them. They might not get back to you right away because they have other things to do besides listen to, complaints or comments or good things.
Yeah.
From the community.
They're doing their best.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And when we vote on something very like the Simple property, I kept a running tab who was for it and who was against it. So majority of the people who was at the meeting or who contacted me were for it. But I will not take a phone call after a vote has been made to demand me to renege on my vote. If you have a problem, call me before that. But I have had people want me to change my vote, and I said, nope, that's not going to happen.
Well, I think that's by the time you get to the voting, to that process, everybody has had ample time to contribute, and you have had ample time to research.
Yes.
And there is a point in time where you have to move forward.
Correct. And we can't read people's minds.
No, that's true.
So that's the other thing. Come to us and talk to us, call us, email us, whatever. But come to the meetings. The best one is the committee of the whole, because you can talk about anything. We can't answer you,
right?
But we can take notes and, try to figure things out. And I know it's scary to get up and talk into the microphone with not knowing things, because I've been attending the city council meetings for years before I ran. And I still get nervous getting up and talking.
Sure.
So,
sure.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's a captive audience. Like you have to listen.
Right.
So you don't get a choice. You have to listen to all of those words. And so that's the best place to do it, because everybody's there.
Right.
And hearing the exact same thing. Yep. That makes sense.
So,
yeah. Well, Sherri, thank you so much. Can you think of anything else?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm hoping, to get reelected. I've been told by many of my constituents that I have done a great job because I say what they want to say, but they're too afraid of. And, that rubs a lot of people the wrong way. But what you see is what you get with me. I've had people say, I'm not going to vote for you because you voted against something I was against, or you voted for something that I was against. Okay? But what about the other 150 things that I did right?
Right.
We have to take a look at the big picture.
Not everybody agrees on everything.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is.
And I'm just going to kind of talk about the elephant in the room for a minute. The video of Alderman Hoyland and me with our police report.
Sure.
it was a very tense night, and I did approach him, and I told him that he made a lot of lies that night.
Mm-hmm.
I did not bump him first. You know, people are going to believe what they want to believe. Sure. And, you know, it is what it is, but I'm passionate about the city. Maybe too passionate. So,
passion's a good thing.
Passion is a good thing, and a lot of times I speak from my heart. You know, and sometimes my brain and my heart don't go together and it comes out. But, you know, that it is what it is.
That's where you're coming from.
That's where I'm coming from. So I'm hoping that people will look at the big picture on everything that myself and the council and the mayor and the staff has done. Because we're not supposed to be me, I. It's we. We make these decisions as a council.
Perfect.
Thank
Sherri,
you.
Thank you so very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And good luck in your campaign as well.
Thank you. You have a great day.
You too.
Thanks.